So now let's talk about a little bit about data type conversion. As we know, we just described 3 types of data. We talked about the strings, let's say my name. We also talked about the integers, let's say my age. We also talked about floating point numbers, just let's say my height. So for this, I'm going to put 5.6 over here. There are ways that we can change from one data type to another. So changing from one data type to another means I'm going to change from either floating point to an integer, or from an integer to a string, or from a string to an integer. Let's consider this case where we have age. Let's say age should now be equal to the height but converted to the integer. So to change from one data form to another, we just have to put the int, meaning we are converting from another data type to an integer, and putting the height over here. So what do you think an integer will do? Since an integer is only numbers with no decimal places, it's going to truncate this number. It's not going to round it, it's going to truncate it, get rid of the 0.6, and it's going to store 5 in age. So now when I print age, I'm going to have 5. So it means it truncated whatever it's in height into age. So now let's try converting age to height. So now let's see, there's our height. We're going to convert it an integer to a float, so we're passing the age over here. So we're trying to convert the age to a float. That's what this means. So what do you think will happen when I run this? Let me print my height. It's printed 8.0, converted it to a floating point decimal, because it has decimals, so it converted it to 8.0. What do you think will happen when I'm trying to convert name to an integer? Let's say now our age is now going to be an integer, and we want to pass our name in there. Notice that name is kudos, it's a string. We're trying to convert it to an integer. So when I run this, what do you think will happen? The code crashes. It says you can't convert name to an integer. How can you convert kudos to an integer? Logically, this doesn't make sense, right? So you can't do that. So what you can do is, let's say you have a string of 35. This is a string of 35, but converting this to an integer is possible, because this 35, so it's just going to convert it 35 into integer. So when I do this, it's going to print I didn't print the age, sorry for that. Let me just print the age and just clear my terminal for now. Let me rerun this. I get 35, because 35 can be converted to an integer, but if you have something more of like, you can just convert this to an integer. So now let's move on to converting integers to strings. Converting integers to string, converting 8 to name is going to make it something like name is equal to 8. This was going to happen because it's just going to convert it to a string, so you're just going to add a quotation at the end. So if I print, let's start with this. As you can see, this is an integer. If I print it, I'm going to get 8. It looks like a number, like an integer, but it's actually a string because it's in a double quote. So I can prove that to you by typing print. As you remember, we learned about the type operator, the type of name. So I'm trying to print what is the type of name. So I'm printing name and I'm printing its type. Let me clear the terminal for you to see all. So now when I run this, we're going to see 8 here and a string. So it's a string. So that is what all this means. So let's move on to a different concept, which is mathematical operations. Mathematical operations, just like arithmetic, can be performed on strings no, sorry, not strings, sorry, integers, floats, and etc. But you can perform mathematical expressions on stuff like strings. The only mathematical expression you can perform on string, I think, is addition, which just does concatenation for you. So let's move on to mathematical operations. Let's assume you have number 1. Let's see, this is 4. We have number 2. This is 6. Right, try to print number 1 plus number 2. As you can see, this prints 10 for us. What if I want to print multiplication? Then I have to use this. This is the multiplication sign in Python. So when I run this, I'm going to have 24. Division, you use this. Sorry, not both of them, but just this. When I run this, see 0.66666, and it returns a float. Can prove that by just printing a type of this. This prints a float because it's 0.66666. Let's look at the modulus operator. This is the modulus operator. Let's remove the type and see what this will give us. What if I do num1 mod num2? What do you think this is? We saw the division to give us what the division, that's the slash. But what if we use the modulus operator or the percentage sign? This is going to give us the remainder when 6 divides 4. So I think 6 can divide 4, so obviously it's going to give us a remainder of 4. So when I run this, I'm going to get 4. What if I have something like 12? Well, 6 divides 12 cleanly with no remainder, so this is just 0. So I think this video is getting long. I'm going to cut it here. We're going to talk more about this later. And I think in the next video, we are going to have a short quiz about what you learned in part 1 of the series and this part of the series. Thank you, and see you in the next section.